morning. Just driving to work. Figured I'd use this time to chat. So, I've been driving a 2023 Chevy Bolt EUV to work for about 6 months now.
My new car.
And I figured, I got some thoughts. Honestly, it's been fantastic driving an electric car instead of gas to work for a number of reasons, but overall it's just nice driving a newer car with a lot of amenities that older gas car didn't have. But I also have some thoughts, some negative thoughts that I've kind of gathered from driving daily. One of which I think is really simple. When I drive to work, I go south and south to work and north home. When you're driving south, in the morning you got the sun, as you can see, on the driver's side, and on the way home going north, you got sun on your driver's side again. Normally that's not too big of a deal because you got a sun visor that you can put in the way. The only downside of this one, and I moved forward for this to get out of the way, but if I'm sitting in my normal position, right about there, there's about a 2-inch gap where this just doesn't cover the window entirely, and it's right up my eye otherwise. So while the drive does vary a little bit along the way, like right now it's gonna curve a little, it goes in a better position and I can stay where I'm at. But a lot of times I gotta keep kind of fiddling and moving and adjusting to get into a good position and avoid the sun. And I'm not like a big or small guy. I'm very, pretty average, about 5'10", and I like to sit pretty comfortably, to be fair. But I think at the very least, if this isn't going to be big enough to go all the way, just add one of those little extending bits just to get that last little gap would be just amazing to make me that much happier driving to and from work every day. And just, anytime I'm driving and it's just not able to block the sun properly, it just gets a little annoying. Not a deal breaker by any means. It's just one of those things that I've gotten used to and noticed over time that I think really could be a simple solution for something that's, coming up short. Other than that, daily I find the car drives incredibly smooth. It works really well, and I think it's surprisingly efficient for the shape of the car. You would think it wouldn't be too crazy. It's pretty standard looking, smaller crossover type car that it's actually on average, and I can check this now, I get right now I've got 13,500 miles on it, and I'm getting an average of 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour. I think that's amazing. So many other cars are more like 3. Some of the newer trucks are like 1.5, maybe 2 if they're lucky. And I'm driving highway right now, and I'm getting 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour, and I'm driving 77 on the highway. I can get up to 80 around here and still get 3.5 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour. I think that's pretty fantastic for highway driving especially. So city driving, funny enough, driving to and from work, I'm often in rush hour, I tend to get much better because I'm stuck in slower traffic. With that slower traffic, I get way more efficient miles per kilowatt hour because I'm going slower. I'm doing a lot of stop and go, which I'm getting really good regen at those times, and it's just really helps the overall mileage. When I started my trip, I was at 292 miles with the guess-o-meter, as this thing has, which is always entertaining, but it's pretty good with that middle guessing amount, and 292 miles is way above the 247. That's after a bunch of city driving and stuff and just local driving over the weekend. As soon as I start driving more quickly and more city or more highway driving, it tends to drop fairly quickly, as you would imagine. And I've gone about 50 miles, and it's saying I'm at 225 miles for the middle guess from 292. So obviously that's dropped more than 50 miles from 292, but it gets pretty close to, I'd say, 250 for that EPA 247 miles. And this is summertime and stuff, so the battery definitely does a lot better. And it gets that on the highway, which is really solid. I have a pretty long drive, about 75 miles each way, and I tend to get home around 100 miles left. So clearly I'm getting right around that 250, sometimes better, depending on the traffic and stuff. But overall, it does great for a fairly long round trip work to work. I know everyone always tries to use those averages. Everyone drives only 20 miles to work or 10 miles on average or something. And that's not always realistic. A lot of people still commute plenty of miles, and I think this is still a rock solid solution. I still have some leeway to drive to lunch and go and visit clients if needed and things like that. So it's still just a solid full replacement for an old gas vehicle. So yeah, this has been amazing. And I mean, just to chat more on that, I mean, having gone from a gas vehicle to an full electric vehicle, I had driven this same drive to work, and I go in about 2 times a week. Do have that nice hybrid schedule, so I don't have to go too crazy. But my daily routine when I'm going into work, when I had to go with gas, I mean, it was a Ford Escape, which I still own, but it's that secondary extra vehicle at this point. I was able to do about those 2 days drive, and then have to fill up at somewhere right around that with that vehicle, because it got about a little over 300 miles on a tank, so I could do this round trip, both days round trip just fine. But it would get close and need to refill. And my girlfriend would do a similar drive on the weekends, and with her driving and me driving that car, we were averaging, and I did the math on this, about 300 to 400 $300 to $400 just in gas each month. And that was quite painful. So switching to this almost completely eliminated that cost, that gas cost, because now she'll just drive it around town as needed, if that, and have to fill up maybe once a month, and like $30 for the fill up, and that is just a huge savings each month going forward. And of course, I still paying off this vehicle, but as soon as it's paid off, I mean, we're gonna save thousands a year just on gas alone, and then there's gonna be savings on oil changes and things like that. That will have to be a lot less with the gas now, and never with this. And I mean, as time goes on, we're definitely expecting to go just full electric and get another electric vehicle to replace the old gas car, because we don't tend to take crazy long trips. If we really had to, we would plan it and charge up, but any long trip should be covered with this, and has otherwise, and we can always charge if we need. But past that, the next jump is taking a plane, so we just drive to the airport anyways. And with that in mind, I mean, some people might be worried about like a ghost drain of sorts with the battery and losing mileage or losing electricity while it's sitting there. But honestly, I've at times I haven't had to go to work for a while, so I've left this and wasn't charging it, just didn't really need to, and I was able to get easily maybe 1% loss after over a week of sitting, if that. I think it does amazing just retaining where it's at. It's not doing anything crazy, and that's in like summertime. That was in wintertime even a little bit. I got this back in January so over 6 months. But I think this has a great just sitting if needed kind of capacity, that it's not something you have to worry about. You can drive to an airport, use up some of the electricity to get there, and trust that it'll sit there without having to be charged. But an added benefit, as a lot of people know, with electric vehicles, you have the ability to get a better parking spot a lot of times in a lot of public places that have separate EV stalls, where you can also charge, usually on a much slower charger. But if you're going to be gone for a while, it's fine to let it just trickle charge, as they say, in that time, and then you would likely just be at 100% anyways when you got back, as it was sitting and able to charge that whole time. So speaking of 100%, because of the drive, I don't want to have to worry about having too low of a charge. So I do charge it to 100% on the days I drive, which isn't recommended, I would say, but since I only do it 2 days a week anyways, it's not going to have the too negative an effect too quickly, I would say. I think, just these 6 months have been, or 8 months, I guess, have not been too bad with, or haven't been bad at all. I haven't noticed any degradation or issues with that, range or anything. I think it's gotten better because I got it in the winter, and over the summer it's obviously been the ideal temperatures and everything for the battery, so it's shown much better range over time. And having had it in the winter to start, I could say I still was able to do this longer drive. It was just a little less. I'd say I was getting total about 220 miles of range instead of that 250. So really that wasn't too bad of a drop. And if it was going to be a little warmer at any time during the day, it would help the range, and any of that slowdown would help as well, in traffic. But about 220 with the the colder temperatures, really still very reasonable for the distance and everything, and the drive that I have to do regularly. So with that, I really think this just solid all around, all year vehicle replacement, full replacement of gas vehicle. You know, depending on your situation, may not be 100%, but from my experience, I mean, I think this covers a much bigger variety of people for their commutes and their schedules than I think people are letting on, and in their conversations just giving that much lower average commuter. I think this can do a lot more. And if you have a charger at work, oh man, you are golden. But you know, if not, I still think you can make it work. Other than that, I think this car does just everything really well. I can say pretty much this entire drive I've been. So let me start by saying this is a Bolt EUV Premium, the higher end. I had on order an LT model. It was taking so long that every time I would check in, they'd say, oh, another 6 months, another 6 months, and it was getting kind of crazy. I had put the order on in August of the previous year, and they said it should have been there in about 6 to 9 months, and I was at that 6 month mark, give or take, in January, and I had called in and they said this premium model that is a red line package too. Like, this is, they basically had the top of the line option was just a random order that was coming in from the dealer had done, or the manufacturer, that no one had claimed, so I had the option to come in and check it out. And I thought I'd be fine with the LT. I think I still would, without all the extra options. But this car has won me over, and I definitely don't want to get rid of it. So with the premium model, the only thing I wish, you know, with the extra money for it, I would have gotten some extra range, but the range is the same throughout, and that was the biggest deal for me. But some of the other nice things are like the sunroof, which I tend to use more often than I was expecting. That has actually been very useful and just nice. Just a nice little thing. The biggest thing, since I drive 75 miles each way in traffic, and I can say this whole time, I haven't been driving. Quite simply, it has Super Cruise from Chevy, and as long as it can see my eyes, which amazingly works with sunglasses, and it has a mapped highway and everything, it's driving. It keeps the pace I want, with 3 levels of different separation. If you are more of a close driver or far, you kind of have that. I drive like right in the middle for comfortable. You know, if there's a lot of people slamming on the brakes, it gives plenty of time for the car to slow down comfortably. And it does an amazing job. I have, through this conversation, have only had to take over. It's turned off twice, where people were slamming down their brakes. It stopped, but it disengaged because it was a little too sudden for it. And one other time during this chat, that when there's an off-ramp on the left side, it gets a little weird where it just wants to disengage for a sec, just in case you're going that way or whatever, and then it'll allow you to re-engage right after. So majority of my drive is with Super Cruise on, and honestly, that alone has been worth it for the level of stress relief it's allowed for my commute, where I, of course, have to keep my eyes on the road, and I am paying attention, and my hands are close to the wheel as needed and stuff. But the fact that I don't have to, in slower situations, hit accelerator and brake constantly, and have to pay attention to the stop and go. It has a nice gentle acceleration once there's a little space, and deceleration once it needs to slow down, and it keeps a good gap. And when you're going slower, it'll close that gap to a safer distance that it feels, is still within what you have set, and it'll spread it out accordingly when you're going faster, so it keeps it nice and safe, and you're not being too spacious with those slower speeds where people would be annoyed. You're actually, still right there. You're not taking up too much space unnecessarily, and it handles it great. Sometimes if you go to a complete stop for too long, it might disengage for a sec, but most of the time, even at a full stop, it'll still keep going once things start moving. Like right now, I'm coming almost to a complete stop, and it's just doing it. And it handles, the higher speeds perfectly fine, curves and, different areas surprisingly well. It doesn't bounce around and stuff like that. I find it kind of aligns slightly to the right of center, which is fine. It's still, like, from what I've been able to find and gauge over time, is it still has plenty of space on that right side. But I guess my personal driving preference is a little more, centered, of course, maybe even a little more left. So it feels a little weird to me at first, but it drives great, and it keeps that stable. Past that, it's just a huge stress relief. That having to slam on your brakes constantly if you look at your speedometer for a second or whatever, and that person is just right in that moment. It's watching all that constantly, and it does amazing. And with that package that allows that, it gives all the 360 camera and everything. So I have a 2-car garage, and it's decent, average size, but it gets a little tight with actually putting 2 cars in. So it's really nice when going into the garage to just throw on the little camera, going slowly, to get all those angles and get right where I need to, and not have to keep looking around and carefully do it. Like, I can do it pretty, calmly, ease of effort. Anyone could, see exactly where they are. Parallel parking has just become insanely easy because of it, and it just gives you that nice, easy, am I in the lines? And it can see the lines, and you can adjust accordingly, and you can see that perfectly in any spot if you're struggling. It does really well with that. So having those cameras is really nice. And I think this one is fairly aggressive when disengaging. So if it can't see your eyes well, honestly, I'll do a quick test. I'm gonna look away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Honestly, this is going a lot longer than I expected. It's still driving somehow. I'm gonna cover up the eye tracking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There you go. So a little under 10 seconds, between 5 and 10 seconds. It blinks red on the light, gives you a sec to get back to it. It'll blink and kind of, it'll blink the light. It'll only make a noise when it goes red and disengages, so you know it's turned off. But otherwise it, you know, gives you a chance. Sometimes the light will be shining off my sunglasses just right, where I got to adjust or something, or you know, it just has something affecting it that I might just need to tug on the wheel to be like, yes, I'm still here, and I am paying attention, and really like stare at the the little sensor. But for the most part, I, you know, just look straight, and it does a great job and doesn't need any extra inputs to keep going. So yeah, that's been just an amazing thing the whole time. And then another thing with the Premiere Premium, whatever, is the and this could go either way for different drivers, is because of the cameras, I have the mirror that has a full camera video mirror, and personally I love it. I honestly find it weird to go back to regular mirrors. My girlfriend, when she drives, she turns it off because she says it kind of gives her a headache, where some people find it weird. It tricks their eyes. It almost feels odd to them. But I feel it has almost no latency, that it feels natural to me. Like the speed, it doesn't feel too weird, speed wise, or like refresh rate or anything. I think it's a very clear picture, and I think it and you can, you know, obviously switch it off, and which is fine, it still works that way. But when using the camera, I don't have to worry about rain or anything where, you know, I have to wipe. If the windshield in the back is dirty, doesn't matter. I can still see clear as day out the back. Nighttime works quite well as well. Nice clear picture. Honestly, I think the visibility is better than the mirror at night, especially. The only weird thing it does, because there is a refresh rate, I find cars with like clearly like LED lights that are LED lights to your eye look like they're solid, but they actually are cycling, and you can see that in the mirror. They'll kind of strobe, not like crazy bad, but it is a little weird to get used to. Not all of them do it, but especially at night, it's more prevalent that it'll do it and really be obvious, and it might be distracting at that time. And if it bothers you, just flip the mirror down. You know, it disengages really easily if you really need to. But it is nice, you know, you have a few settings, because it's, you know, a skinny mirror that you can adjust the picture up and down, and zoom in, zoom out, find what's a comfortable, you know, position for you. You might want it really far down or really high up, depending on how you sit and how you like to see things. But with that, it also has a little on the stock, you get a little option to clean it off, because sometimes it can get dirty if it's really the weather's really bad out, and it is getting it a little dirty. But you have a little way to it'll spray it and clean it off with some washer fluid, and allow you to keep using it even if it's getting dirty, which is a nice little touch. It's nice, and there's a little thing coming off the back that's covering it, and that's why it tends to not get dirty. So it's up high on the back, I noticed, compared to the actual backup camera, which is in the middle, which tends to get dirtier more easily, unfortunately, and doesn't have a washer. But at least the one that you're using while driving, you can wash, and is easy to use and clean and keep safe. So I'm gonna disengage during this merge just to be safe. Amazingly, so right now there's an express lane merging into the regular lane that I'm in, the left lane. And this car will, with Super Cruise, will actually zipper in. It'll just keep going and following the car ahead, so it's not really, you can't really tell the left car crazy well, so it might try to close the gap, so you got to watch that. I've been able to have it zipper properly with the cars driving properly, and not disengage amazingly, but usually I take over just to be safe. But for the most part, it actually will keep doing it and keep driving as long as it has the at least one lane in most cases, or one line to follow. It'll keep following, and do just fine. But use your best judgment on that. Past that, I think this car, compared to some other electric vehicles, I think it does a really good job with regen, because it has a nice little simple one pedal driving button, and that for my girlfriend, she doesn't like using the one pedal driving, so for those who aren't comfortable with it, you can get a more regular drive experience if you turn it off, and it'll have that just kind of coast. It'll still regen a little automatically, but it'll feel more like a gas car coasting. But regardless of how you're doing it, there is the paddle on the left of the steering wheel that gives you that more aggressive regen anytime, whether you have that one pedal on or off. So what I like to do is one pedal driving. I love it, and you get used to it, where I tend to let go at a certain point and just adjust if it's not the right position with that paddle to help give just a little bit more or less, depending, which has been amazing. On an average drive, I almost never use the actual brakes. What I find, and if you're really trying to save your brakes and not have to use them at all, I find the Super Cruise does use the regen a little, but it's like a blended, you can tell it's like a blended braking and regen to slow down. So using that will use your brakes, unfortunately, but not too badly, because it is a blended use. But just something to note, I think, that I wasn't sure on when I first got the car, but I've been able to tell and learn over time using it. And otherwise, the regen works great. One pedal, I think it's a good amount. It's not too aggressive on its own, but having that more aggressive paddle to use whenever you are slowing down and need it, and just need to slow down a little faster, I think is a great implementation, a great way to toggle it as needed, give that little extra without having to put it on the pedal and having to be too aggressive on a normal use. So yeah, I think that's been fantastic. And just overall, I think the Bolt EUV is definitely the better way to go compared to the EV. The Bolt EV, even though the Bolt EV does get a little better mileage, I think it's fine. I think what this car brings is just a better overall look. You have the better packages available and the better back seat. I've driven, adults in the back, of course, and they're always surprised at how much space they have, and I've sat back there randomly, here and there, and it's great what it provides there. The one thing I would note, if you have any bigger use for the trunk or the hatch, maybe if you have dogs or different things, I find it's a little small. That you definitely get that back passenger seating with the slightly larger size, but that trunk is unfortunately not as big as I would like. I think we have 2 medium-sized dogs, bigger dogs, I guess, a Husky and a German Shepherd, that we can fit in the back trunk of our Ford Escape comfortably, but this trunk, it would be really tight. What's nice, because it's an EV, it has that lower trunk space that you can have, and what I tend to do is just put the mat all the way down so there's that depth. But I haven't even tried to put the dogs in here yet. I just know it's not deep enough, and they could fit, but they wouldn't be able to move around, and that wouldn't be good. Like, if you really had to, you could. Past that, if you lower the seats, you have a ton of space. Yeah, obviously. So, you know, depending on how you're driving, what you're driving, and what you need to do, if you really had to get something really big in here, lowering the back seats would definitely handle most large items pretty comfortably. It's just that regular hatch trunk space that is lacking, but, you know, you get this smaller, somewhat compact vehicle because of that, and, you know, it's some trade-offs in certain places that overall, other than the dogs, I can fit most things comfortably, you know, and it hasn't become an actual problem where I haven't been able to fit what I need to fit. But I think it's worth saying, like, depending on how you're using the car, that may be a pain point, and maybe something you gotta find a different option for, make adjustments in how you're doing things to accommodate that. But it was definitely smaller than I was expecting from pictures and different things, and just hearing measurements is one thing, but truly you could fit a full size, like 2 side-by-side full-size suitcases standing with the floor down easily. But that's about it, depth-wise and stuff, and side to side. I think that's one thing that's hard to tell in a lot of cases with this car, is it's not very wide. So you can fit people side by side, 2 people in the front and back, but like this middle console is like that big. It's 6 inches, 3 inches, shoot, that's maybe 4 inches wide. It's very skinny in the middle here. It's definitely shaved some space. And in the back, you know, fitting a third person in the back would be, hopefully they're of 3 pretty skinny people, so not ideal. That's definitely a downside. Like, but if you're driving 4 people, you're all going to be quite comfortable. I think this vehicle, especially the one upgrade as well, in the premium version, Premier, whatever, is an adjustable seat, electrically adjustable seat, which works really well. A little lumbar support if you need it as well, and that's great for the driver. The only downside is that, you know, the passenger doesn't get that. Theirs is manual and stuff, works fine, but unfortunate. And the one thing I wish, because me and my girlfriend drive this, and she's smaller than me, of course, she moves the seat, but there's no memory setting. I wish it had different saved seat settings for the 2 of us. That memory seats, whatever you want to call them. I really wish it had that, because every time we trade it, we each have to switch off, and it becomes a little annoying here and there, but not the end of the world, just a small thing. If you're driving your own car, you'll never notice, but if you're sharing the car, I don't know, might be a little problematic. But at least that, because it's electric, you can get those nice small adjustments, get it right where you like, as needed, so it's not the end of the world. personally, I think, you know, it's still nice to have it. Past that, I think, yeah, this is just a great car. And, you know, I bring this up because the Bolt, for a little bit there, I thought I was about to have one of the last Bolt EUVs. 2023 version was about to, or maybe 2024 was about to be the last version, and this was going to be a rare car all of a sudden, which, you know, I was glad I got in when I got in. But, you know, clearly, and I can tell, like, this is a great car and people really like the car, that they made a big enough stir that Chevy is going to keep making it, which I think is great. And because of that, I think it's worth sharing my take on it, so you're better informed to be able to make a decision on getting this car or not compared to others. And I think, you know, if you get the LT model, I think you'll be totally fine. You still get all that range, you get plenty of features that are going to be rock solid for your daily use. Sun's changing. That I think save the money, get the LT model if you don't need the higher end stuff. Again, I got it because I was tired of waiting, and this was the only option available. I'm still glad, and it was still better priced than other models, other electric vehicles with similar range. It was still cheaper with all the fixins, and I even paid a little extra, unfortunately, because the dealer I went to, their thing for all their vehicles, they tinted the windows, did weather mats, and did a wrap on the front for protection, a clear coat that helps with chips and stuff. It was stuff I was happy to get, but it was more money up front than I would have liked to have paid at the time, so it would have been even less than what I ended up paying, but it was still worth it in the end. So overall, I really think this especially was worth it. It's cheaper, you still get solid range, plus the charger that comes with it is really nice because it's dual level. Right away I was able to plug into a regular 110, 120 volt outlet and charge the vehicle from daily, but that full charge was like 2 full days, which is great. This is a really efficient car. It's a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack, so it's not crazy large and can trickle charge pretty decently, and I was able to get away with that until I got a level 2 charge, a 240 volt charger installed in my garage. And what was great is through Q-Merit, Chevy paid for all that, up to $1,500 worth. And that process only took about a week for them to get all the paperwork through, have someone come out and install it same day, or and then someone came and inspected it real quick, make sure they did their job right. And I think they did an amazing job, and I use that every day. And with that, I'm able to charge from empty. It would probably take 8-ish, maybe 10 hours at the most. But on average, when I get home, it's like 6 hours remaining, and it charges before midnight most days. So if I really needed it the next day, I definitely am good to go with that home charging option. You know, sadly, this doesn't fast charge super fast. So again, I wouldn't really want to do crazy long trips on it. I could, but 55 kilowatt hour peak fast charging obviously isn't going to be too great. But if you need it in a pinch, you know, it's not the worst. So home charging works great. Of course, you need to have a home to do that. Trickle charging still was doing it in about 2 days, and was a viable option you know, if you don't drive as far as me, you know, I'm sure it would actually work out just fine. But yeah, it does a great job with that. And I mean, I'm trying to go full electric as best as possible, because I own a home, I have solar on it, so that is big enough solar to cover normal charges. And even with charging this on a regular basis, my electric use only went up a little bit. That it hasn't been, I've only had a few months where I've had to pay an extra $10-20. Most months it's negative, which I think it's something to figure out with your local electric provider, because they're all different. Basically, the way it works for mine is any extra stuff gets sold back to them. So when I'm using it more, you know, I have to obviously pay more. But when I'm not using it from the grid and I'm selling back to them, I'm getting money towards, I get money back all in one check every April. But even if I'm not using the grid, just being connected to it costs about $25. So unfortunately, I don't have a zero bill technically. I will always have, unless I go full off grid, I have a $25 electric bill every month if my solar covers everything. Which, if you don't know that at a time, might be annoying. I did learn that in advance, and I was expecting it, so it's nothing too crazy. But something worth noting, if you're trying to go full electric and save money in certain places, watch out for that small but still regular payment that you'll have to make to stay connected to the grid, because there will be time you'll need electric and stuff like that will be necessary, that you need that connection. Unless you get batteries and you're full off grid, having that is necessary. And paying $25 basically to use them as a battery, essentially, because all that extra goes to them, and I still get money for it. So them, anytime I am using the electric, is basically the extra solar, and they're a battery for me. So overall, that's done well, covering the car pretty decently. Like, I do use it a good amount, I do charge it a good amount, and for me to only have a little extra, you know, if I didn't have solar, you know, that could be a decent bit more. And depending on where you're trying to save money and stuff like that, might affect your thoughts and where you put the money. But even if I was paying extra in electricity, I'd say it's worth it for $300 to $400 in gas savings. And if you're using the car less, you're charging less, you're paying less, you know. It's still worth it. But everyone's going to have a slightly different experience. For me, yeah, this makes really good sense. And I think it's worth, you know, giving my take on it. Just an average person who's still driving to work and going around daily with it. Yeah, I think this is a great car. I'm really looking forward to more electric cars being on the road and being more prevalent and being a regular thing, you know. Sadly, my work doesn't have a charger installed. If there was, I wouldn't even have to worry, you know, with having enough range. But maybe one day, as things continue to change. But we'll see. Yeah, and because we want to go full electric, my girlfriend the vehicle I showed her that I wasn't sure how she'd feel about, that she actually really does want to get, is the Volkswagen ID Buzz, a big bus electric vehicle, and I am all for it. I think that thing is super cool. It has similar range to this, so it would fit in well with our daily use and everything, and I think the added space for that would be excellent to have. Yeah, looking forward to it. Whenever I get that, I'll definitely talk about my take and thoughts overall with using it. So other than that, yeah, I mean, this is just an average drive into work and my thoughts. So thanks for hanging out, and hopefully I helped answer some questions or whatever. But you know, if you have some extra questions on this car, or any, you know, maybe electric car questions or solar or anything like that, leave a comment. Let me know. I'm happy to give my take. I've been doing a lot of research into, you know, going electric and using these things and how to, you know, implement them into my life, that you know, I can answer some questions on an average take. So yeah, leave a comment, like, subscribe if you want to see more. I'll be having these chats while driving more often. I think with my busy schedule, this is the best way to make a video nowadays. So keep an eye out, and yeah, thanks for watching.